of Let's Talk About. Over the weeks, we have discussed issues ranging from how to live a purposeful single life, preparations to make before saying I do. Today, we talk about the wedding versus the marriage, throwing a particular spotlight on traditional marriages. After you have decided not to stay single and to be equally yoked with another person, what are the things you should know about a marriage, considering weddings in particular? Today with me, we have our very own Reverend Minister in charge, Reverend Dr. Martin Eduobe, to join us in the discussion. Papa, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to having an insightful discussion. Please stay tuned and don't go anywhere. We are diving right in. Papa, to begin, what is a marriage, essentially? What is a marriage?
Right. There is a very nice definition I find here. I think for purpose of our discussion, I want to read that out. It's coming from two authors, Stephen Ruland and Marvin Mavis. And it's in their book, Cultural Anthropology, A Christian Perspective. It says, marriage is a social institution that is a pattern of norms and customs that define and control the relationship between a man and a woman, and the relationship between them and the rest of society. So from this definition, the indication is that it's a relationship between a man and a woman, at least from the biblical Christian perspective. It is also a relationship that is guided by some norms. And it is not only about the two of them, it is also about the society in which they live.
Thank you, Papa, for that definition. Now I have a question. Is there anything like a Christian marriage? Do we have differences? Is there anything specifically called a Christian marriage?
Actually, there is not.
Okay.
Just from the definition that I picked, if we talk about marriage, then when you add the adjective Christian, what we are saying in effect is that it's a marriage that is being guided by Christian norms, just to make it become acceptable to God, who for us as Christians initiated marriage.
Okay. So we look at we are looking at traditional marriages in detail. Now, before we know that there are so many processes and practices that go into traditional marriages. One question that is very important to me is with regards to the dowry. There have been instances where I've heard that some parents said, okay, we won't take a dowry. Go ahead and marry our daughter. Is there anything wrong with that, Papa?
Right. So just as I indicated from the definition, the focus is on the relationship between the two people.
Okay.
But the society is also involved. Because every child belongs to a family.
Okay.
And in our cultural context, families are brought together through marriages. And therefore, in a way, there is a level of contracting of the marriage. And it is in the contracting of the marriage that there have been prescribed guidelines, such as presentation of dowry. It will interest you to know that even when Abraham was going to get a wife for his son Isaac, he had to pay a dowry.
Yes.
So when people ask for dowry, it's okay.
Okay.
If they don't ask for it, that is what they want to.
Okay.
However, we will realize that because it is a contracting of a marriage, there should be a level of exchange of gifts to cement the contract.
Okay.
One, to show appreciation, and also to realize that something has been given out, people have appreciated it, and therefore we are in an agreement.
Okay, because ideally in a contract there should be an offer and an offering and a consideration thereof of something. Yeah. All right. Now, Papa, in traditional marriages, we don't see, at least I have not seen anyone sign any legal documents at a traditional wedding. I have not witnessed it before. Are there any legal documents that are signed? If no, will a traditional marriage be considered legal, considering the fact that no documents are appended to?
Yeah.
Yes.
In African setting, signing is not the only way of endorsing an agreement.
Okay.
In fact, I was a bit surprised to know that if we buy a piece of land, if I sell a piece of land to you, traditionally, in the olden days, they could pluck a leaf from the land. And then the two of us will hold each a point, the other side of the leaf. And then we pull. When we pull, the part that comes to you, you go and keep. And the part that I have, I also keep. And that is a contract.
Okay.
Anytime there is litigation on the land, whoever is litigating produces evidence. And between the two of us, the evidence is the leaf. So if you bring your leaf, the part of your leaf, and I also bring mine, and we can join, then it means that our leaf was picked from one spot. So in our culture, actually signing does not come in.
Okay.
You ask the question of whether that makes it legal.
Yes.
Yes. In our land, in the land of Ghana, which I think next week, God willing, the lawyers will come in and throw more light
on that.
We'll find that there are 3 marriages that are accepted in law. They have the traditional marriage, we have the marriage under ordinance, and then we have the Islamic or Mohammedan marriage. So there is no Christian marriage. Of the 3 that I mentioned, there is nothing said about Christian marriage. The only thing is that the Christian marriage builds around the marriage under ordinance, but also begins with the traditional marriage. Just that you don't go to register the traditional marriage. If you register the traditional marriage, then you, the man, can add to your wives. Because that is what the traditional marriage prescribes. Under the marriage under ordinance, 1 man, 1 wife. And that is why the church identifies with marriage under ordinance. But before you come to perform that marriage under ordinance, in the church setting, they will require that you should have performed the customary marriage before coming to perform the marriage under ordinance.
Right. Now, Papa, you mentioned that the church identifies with the marriage under ordinance because it does not create room for polygamy. But what if, as a person, I want just the traditional marriage, but I do not want a polygamous marriage? Is it now dawning on me and my partner to decide to remain monogamous? Like, how does that happen? Does the church control that too? Can the church control that?
Well, the contract is between the two of you.
Okay.
So if you marry a man and you tell him, let us stay under the traditional marriage, and he adds to his wives, the law allows him to do that. Okay. So when it comes to the church cannot say, no, go and divorce your wives. Under the law, that person is married. If the church thinks that the man must keep 1 wife, the church cannot impose its rule
on him.
The church rather must teach him and bring him to the point where he says, oh, okay, I want to find ways and means of putting away these women. And it's not just a matter of, hey, pack your things and go. Because there has been a contracting.
Okay.
And therefore, you have to find a way to take the person back to the family so that the divorce is established.
Papa, there's one thing I like about white weddings. We are not going into white weddings, but I would like to bring this in. It is during the announcements, for lack of a better word, we hear the pastor or reverend minister saying if anyone has any objections, they should see the minister in charge or thereafter hold their peace. In a traditional marriage, you don't ideally get that. So if I'm going to marry someone who is already married to someone, how do I know that? How do I find out?
Right, thank you. There is a saying in Akan that Okwawaria Bisa. If you are entering into marriage, ask. And I'm more familiar with the Akan, but I know it equally applies in other cultures. Traditionally, what they do is that the man must go to the woman's house
Okay.
and introduce himself to the family and say, our son has found a lady here in this house
Okay.
and desires to marry. So we want to know if she's available. Then the family of the woman will say, oh, okay, now that you've indicated your intent, we want you to go. That traditionally should have been the knocking, the kokoko.
Okay.
So you have indicated your intent. Then the family will set spies to go behind, find who is this gentleman. At the same time, the man also would have done his homework before taking the parents to the woman.
Okay.
And then when the homework has been done and the family of the woman is satisfied, the intern will send a message to the man's family and say, oh, we are ready. It's like they are now, the kokoko, they are saying now, come in.
Come in. Okay.
So then you can go in and perform the traditional marriage.
Okay.
So if you look at it, even though they are not going to ask people publicly to declare, they would have done their homework to know that this lady we are going to marry is not married.
Okay.
Or if she has married, she married before, is divorced or is widowed.
Okay.
This woman is coming from this place or coming from that place, and we are confident that our son can marry him. Then the marriage process is continued.
Okay. Papa, this may sound funny, but I've heard that in the olden days, they even check for mental illnesses and other illnesses. Is that still true today?
Well, now you see, the young people who have come, they search for their own. They go and do the search and bring the person.
Okay.
So the assumption is by parents that, oh, he or she
It's okay.
has done the homework. The essence of it is that, you see, our people, even though they might not be termed scientists, they know some of these genetic influences. Sometimes they will make those underground work to see what type of home is this child coming from. Is it a home where when we get into, the products are going to be of benefit to us? And that's why they want to check on ailments like epilepsy, leprosy, mental health. They want to make sure that it's not that, because there can be some homes where there might be no traces.
Yes.
But by virtue of stress, people will get
things may come
mental
in.
disorders.
Right. Right.
But they just want to be sure that naturally, under God, are things okay.
Okay.
So that is why they do all those checkups.
Okay. Papa, during traditional marriages or during the traditional marriage rites, we see some really cultural and traditional practices take place. Sometimes libation is poured. We see people invoking gods and spirits and all of that. As a Christian who doesn't believe in anything of that sort, how do I handle something like that from a family I am marrying into or I'm being married into?
Right. It's all part and parcel of the homework.
Okay.
You see, if you are marrying from a home, we need to also realize that that person from that home is in a bigger family. If the woman I am going to marry is from a royal family, sometimes it might mean that our children are going to be direct descendants to the throne or the stool. And so it is important that the royal family is informed. And in some situations, the chief will even ask that the contracting of the marriage should be done in the palace.
Palace, right.
And there is no way you can go to a palace or you go to a traditional distance and it has links in that way where they will not pour libation.
Okay.
So when I'm marrying, I should know that the woman I am marrying, I met her in church, but she is a carrier of chiefs and queen mothers. And therefore, as I go into that marriage, I must expect that to happen. And not only the libation pouring, Sometimes when it comes to the issue of, you go, they give you a long list, and you find 2 bottles of schnapps. Then you go and tell the family, as for me, I'm a Christian. They are also Christians. But the reason why they are asking for those liquor, those bottles, is because they serve a purpose in the traditional marriage. Normally, it's not that they are going to drink. They might open one and sip for purpose of having witnesses, that the witnesses have tasted of the drink. And the drink goes into the people. So whoever took the drink has become a witness.
Okay.
But the other bottle is put aside. Sometimes it's kept under bed, indicating that anytime we see that bottle, it means our daughter consented to a marriage.
Okay.
And the evidence is the bottle of schnapps that is lying under our bed.
Okay.
In some situations, they will even collect an extra bottle to go and announce to the family, the extended family, that as daughter so and so.
With the growing challenges of life,
When people go and say, as for me, I'm a Christian, and so I won't bring drinks. Sometimes people interestingly think that when they give the money, they are okay. Yes, but you give the money, and they have to use the money to purchase
the
drinks. Because what has to be done with drinks cannot be done with money.
Right.
Unless the family requests that.
Right. Now, Papa, now that we are talking about the hard drinks, I've heard stories. Most of my things are stories. I've heard stories that when a marriage breaks, they return that drink that has been kept under the bed to the family that brought it. Is that true?
Exactly so. Because the evidence of that marriage is the bottle of schnapps.
Okay.
So if the woman decides at any time not to marry, she has to return the man's drink to him. And that, in a way, it ignites the process for divorce. For as long as, when you return the drink and the man receives it, or the family receives it, it means that they consent to the breaking of the marriage. The divorce can take place.
Okay. Papa,
Because now there is nothing to seal it.
Okay, so if they don't accept the drink, what happens?
Then it means the marriage has not been
so you'll be
dissolved.
forced to stay in the marriage.
Well, so it means you might be separated, but not divorced.
Okay.
You can decide to choose and live in your own house.
Okay.
But then, after a certain period, if the marriage has not been consummated, or the woman has not been there to perform her duties, that can be taken up. And sometimes you can even go to the court and use that as a basis to divorce.
Okay, with the traditional marriage?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You can, because you see, the traditional marriage is a contract.
Yes.
So if there are difficulties, you can equally go to the court. Sometimes they will say, go and do out of court settlement.
Okay.
But the end of it is that they want to assist you to take a good decision.
Okay. Papa, I have another one. Can I bargain my dowry? So I assume I'm a man and I go and the list is very tall. Can I plead for them to? Is it right to do that?
We don't bargain in public. Then it means you've undermined yourself. You are not a person of. You are not ready.
Okay.
So normally, when the list is brought, it is the responsibility of the lady to, I don't use the word bargain, but negotiate on behalf of the man and say, oh, daddy, these pieces of cloth, 10 pieces, that's too much. I know the man. I know he's capable of taking care of me, but for this particular time, he might not be able to. So just reduce it. So before the list is sent to the man's family, all these negotiations would have been done.
Oh, okay.
Before the final list is sent.
Okay.
You don't send the final list and then they come. The man would have seen the list from the lady's end. At least there would have been some conversation around it. If there are a few things that the lady doesn't feel comfortable about, she can discuss with the parents. And if they consent to it, then the final list is given to the man. But not to have a list and then you come and say, oh, you asked for 10 bottles of Coca-Cola, but we are able to get only 6. If it is my daughter you're coming to marry, I'll say, then go. When you get the rest of the
you
4,
can come and marry.
come back. Yes.
Okay. Very interesting revelations. I didn't know all of that. We will take a quick break right now. We'll take a musical interlude. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
Welcome back from the short break. My name is Togo Lamadeku Sedinam. I still have Reverend Dr. Martin Eduobing as my guest. You are watching Let's Talk About. We would love to hear your comments, contributions, objections, answers to any questions you might have on these platforms. You could send them through our Facebook or YouTube platforms or through the WhatsApp number 0501 579 996. Again, 0501 579 996. Papa, we are back from the break. So I have another question. On Sunday at church, for those who attend Trinity, you mentioned that during the white wedding, only a particular number of people are needed to make the marriage legal or official, sort of. At the traditional wedding, do we have a fixed number of people who should be present before the marriage can be considered a marriage, as a marriage?
Thank you. Actually, the traditional marriage involves the parties, the man and the woman. It involves their families. And so the lady's family should be represented. And in some cultures, if they are matrilineal, the lady's uncles should be present.
Okay.
In some cultures where they are patrilineal, the ladies, the gentleman's aunts
Should be
are
present.
those who lead the delegation,
Okay.
like the Gans, who will lead the delegation to go and contract the marriage with the woman's aunties, coming from the mother's side if they are maternal. So these representations are important. But because in the African setting, we are a community, you'll find that there will be representations also of the family's friends. So the lady's friends will be there, the gentleman's friends will be there,
Okay.
the extended family. And sometimes in some cultures, especially where it's a small town, there will be a chief's representative there.
There, right.
Yes, so that he will go and inform the chief that this is what has happened.
Okay. Papa, I've also heard that when the traditional marriage is taking place, or when those hard liquor, bottles of hard liquor are brought, if the lady's dad, depending on if she's matrilineal or patrilineal, if the lady's dad specifically, or someone who took care of her, does not accept the drink, the marriage is null and void. Is that true?
Well, first and foremost, there is a knocking.
Okay.
That is a key preliminary step to avoid any disgrace on the day of contracting the marriage. The homework would have been done. The family knows the man, and vice versa. And therefore, when it comes to the traditional marriage, the contracting of the marriage, where the items have been brought, even there, you find that sometimes I've been to marriages and I've been quite worried, because sometimes you realize that the items are brought. The lady has not been asked if the items, the gifts, should be accepted. And then the delegation that comes, the father's item, they give it to the father. The mother's item, they give it to the mother. Meanwhile, the core of the contracting is the lady.
Yes.
So if you give it to me as a father, and my daughter comes and says no, you are given the gift, you can't collect the
Take it
gift
back.
again. So all those gifts are supposed to be designated and put there. And then after the dowry has been accepted by the lady, all the other peripheries. When you read the Bible about Isaac's marriage to Rebecca, they performed all the traditional things and then gave gifts to the mother and the brother-in-law. So when the homework has been done properly, it is very obvious that we will not come to a point where items will be presented and people will say, no, we don't want it. Sometimes, even when they talk about going to inspect the items that have been brought, you realize of late that it's just a
formality.
Yeah,
right?
They just go into the room or they just go by the side and come.
Okay.
Because the assumption is that if you have brought an Ecolac, it surely will have
some items.
Exactly.
Okay. Papa, I have another question. Until recently, I didn't know that to have a wedding in like a park or these gardens that have come up, the venue would have to be licensed. Now with traditional marriages, we are seeing a lot of outdoor traditional marriages, and most of them are at home. I don't think our homes are licensed. So what happens? Does that rule apply to the traditional marriages too?
Next week, God, I think that lawyers will throw a little. I will be glad you ask about this
Next
use
week.
of social event centers.
Okay.
Yes, in the question, for them to clarify.
Okay.
But so far as it relates to the traditional marriage, the traditional marriage is performed in a home or a place where the woman's family sits to receive their visitors. So if they decide that they want to sit at a social event center and receive their guests, well,
That's okay.
That's okay. Maybe their house is a small house, and so they think that because of the attendance, they want to go to a public space. As I said, traditional marriage is legally recognized, and that is why one can do a further step of registering it. And so for as long as the exchange of gifts takes place, it is an indication that both parties have accepted the marriage.
Okay. Now
Let me just add this one interesting thing I learned.
right.
You know, in some cultures, the eldest father owns all the girls of his siblings. So if I have a senior brother and I give birth and my daughter wants to get married, I cannot be the one who should supervise the contracting of the marriage. They have to go to my senior brother, whether he lives in Wagadugu or wherever. You know, I had an experience of a man in my church whose sons met a lady from the Upper East. And then in that ethnic group, they said that you have to go. He met a lady in UK, but he was told that the lady's senior father is in the village, up there beyond Bolga. So he had to go to Bolga and continue further. When his father came back, he said, hey, he took a public transport to Bolga, and then they had to walk to the hamlet.
Wow.
That is where the senior father is. He's not in UK.
No.
You see, so there is always in this arrangement some people who matter, who must be present. If that senior brother gives the go-ahead, then the marriage can be contracted.
Right.
Now, sometimes there are situations, as you might have, I think you said along the line, that the lady might not have been taken care of by the father. The father, at all costs, in a way, must be informed. But sometimes, out of guilt, he will say, "Oh, go ahead."
Okay.
And then an uncle can sit in. There are some situations where even the father will say that, "Oh, the man who has taken care of my daughter, maybe the daughter at a very small age, want to live with this man, she's grown up, become somebody who is mature to get married." You say, "Oh, as a way of honor, I want this family she lived with to contract the marriage on my behalf."
Right.
He might come to sit in, but everything will be received by the
That would.
man, and possibly that which was given to the father, a portion will be given to the biological father.
Okay.
Because I believe, and keep emphasizing that, children are born not just in space. The father donates the sperm, which is very expensive to get before the woman gets pregnant. So even if the man did not take responsibility, for me, he was a donor.
Okay. So he should be given that
And
respect.
so that honor must be given him.
Right. Right. Okay. Papa, before we continue, you can join in the conversation by sending your questions and answers to the WhatsApp number 0501 579 996, 0501 579 996, or drop a comment on any of our social media platforms and on YouTube as well. Papa, we are continuing. Now we are moving to another dimension. Arranged marriages or betrothals. Is there any biblical backing? Do we have examples in the Bible?
Thank you. In fact, when you look through the Bible, there are several examples of traditional marriages. The first marriage, the man did not even know about it in a way. Even, well, I won't say he didn't know, was not involved. It was God who took the decision and said, this son I've created, this man, it is not good for him to be alone. So I will give him a suitable help. And God took the initiative to create that which would be appropriate for the man. He put him to sleep. Then when he had finished, he brought him to the man Adam. Adam woke up and saw a naked woman with all these features. He said, wow, this is now the bone of my bones. So in that marriage, the man was not practically involved in the choice. We see the case of, the example I've cited, of Abraham finding a wife for his son Isaac. Isaac never knew Rebekah, but Abraham knew the families. That's why he gave the instructions to the servant to go to his own kindred and find a wife for his son. So he knew the family. So you can see in this that in that tradition, families knowing each other can find partners for their children.
Okay.
Because I have brought up my child. I know his strengths and weaknesses. I know the kind of lady I'm looking for. I might not necessarily know the lady, but I know the family. I know that this family is a good family. So then I'll say, oh, I want my son to marry from this home. Then the family are friends, they are family friends. And then they give birth to a very nice girl. I've studied her from a distance, I see that she'll be good. And then I recommend her to my son. Sometimes there are some situations the man might not necessarily be aware from the beginning. It's when the parents have done all their underground work, then they will tell you, I'm getting a wife from this house. And then she consents to it. He consents to it.
But Papa, it is my marriage. Shouldn't I know? Shouldn't I be asked if I want to maybe marry Kweku from A's house? Or why does some people are forced into it? That's the truth. Why does it have to happen like that?
Right. Because you asked about the Bible, you see that because even though Isaac did not know Rebekah, when we read the narrative, when the servant brought Rebekah to Isaac, the Bible says he took her into his mother's tent and loved her. Loved her at first sight. But that love includes a consummation. So that same night, no, they were connected. You see? And then they built on that relationship. And we don't hear of a divorce until we hear of their death. So sometimes, because the families involved were important, all the indications were that Rebekah was a very hospitable and serviceable lady. And so when she came, I'm sure she brought all her strength. So in that situation, he didn't know about her. But if you look at the case of Jacob marrying Leah and Rachel, he knew them. He lived with them, he saw them, and then he made a choice. But he was told, no, in this culture, you can't marry the younger one when the old one
eldest is not married.
So you have to marry the old one before you get the younger one. And he consented to it. So they vary. In some situations, the betrothal system we're talking about, betrothal is not done in space. Betrothal marriages are done between families who know each other. I supervised a long essay and I learned a lot of lessons. In those cultures where there is the betrothal system, right from the beginning, there has been a contact between both families. The girl's potential wife, sometimes she has not even been born, but the man says, I would want my son to marry from your house. And that boy will start going to the farm of the in-laws to be. Then the girl is born into that family. Then the man says, oh, as for this girl, when she grows, I'll give her to my son. And he has to continue. And when the girl gets to about the puberty period, in fact, the boy who wants to marry that girl has to organize his friends. If the girl's mother sells pito, he has to organize his friends to go and drink, buy the woman's pito, create market for her. Go to the girl's father's farm, go and weed. So there is accumulated payment of dowry in disguise. Until that point where that girl has grown and is of age and is been married. So that is why sometimes when we don't understand some of these cultures, we run into trouble. The guy has worked for the family. And then the girl has been studied. She grows up. They say, go and marry. You say, no, I won't go and marry. So how do they settle the market that he created for the mother and the father? In fact, in one culture related to this, I came to learn that when they have even collected the items for the girl, the cow component is given to the brother-in-law of the girl to also go and contract a marriage. So if the girl decides that she won't marry again, it means her brother has to go and collect the cow she's used in contracting.
Bring it back.
Go and bring it back. And so the brother, the accountant, will make sure that he keeps his eye on the sister's marriage.
To make sure it works.
So the betrothal system has its own advantages and disadvantages. But those who practice it, in fact, I was surprised to know, as I read that work, that in those cultures, divorce is a taboo. And they make sure that the marriage will work. And so sometimes, even when the girl is going, she will have to go with her auntie. Okay. The auntie will hand her over to the gentleman's auntie and make her feel at home so that the marriage will be encouraged. So there are those systems in some places. We know Jesus, for example, Mary was betrothed to Joseph. They got married. And Joseph took responsibility of Jesus.
Okay. Right. Papa, before we continue, we have, let me say, an answer to one of my questions about how traditional marriages can be registered, or if they can be registered and legal. Kweku Atakra Jumo says, traditional or customary marriages can be registered. The registration does not change its character. However, it provides a formal record of the fact that the marriage has been contracted. I think we have an answer.
Yes, and this coming from a lawyer.
Yes. So we'll take his word for it.
That's very helpful. Yes, okay. Thank you very much.
Yes. Papa, now, if I didn't know you, I would have said you were rooting for betrothals or arranged marriages. Is that the case? Do you prefer that to let me meet the person and know him and take him home?
Well, each of these systems have their own advantages and disadvantages.
Right.
I am very, very proud to talk about some of these arranged marriages because I'm a beneficiary. You know, my mother died very early, and my father also. So the one who succeeded my mother, that's the next of kin. When I was in the university,
I went home, and then she told me that she's seen a lady. Apparently, that lady came from about 2 houses. I was say even 1.5 houses away from where my auntie lived.
Okay.
And her grandmother has been a friend of my auntie, long-term friends. So he mentioned it to me, and I said, "Oh, okay. Maybe I have to know the lady." So one day, the lady's grandmother sent her to my auntie to collect something. And when she came and left, my auntie said, "This is the lady." So I said, "Okay." I was on vacation, so while I was away, she arranged and we met. We talked. And we saw that we have a lot in common. And those times, it was not like today, where there are telephones. It was basically writing of letters. So we couldn't talk on phones.
Okay.
But after 1 year, when we met, we told ourselves that we are going to study each other. We have been put into a relationship by virtue of the fact that our parents know us.
Yeah.
So let's know each other. When we get to the point where we think we can cross the bridge, then we'll do it. So at a certain point, it became very obvious that we can marry. So I told her that I want us to marry. And she consented. And we got married. We've been married for more than 30 years.
Nice.
And we are happy. And I think that we'll continue to enjoy until about when we hit our centenary. You see, but the point I'm making out of that is I didn't have a doubt because I trusted my auntie. And one of the things she said is that she's coming from an Osofo's house. Her grandfather was an Osofo.
Okay.
I had then been active in Christian circles. I've had relationships where the ladies say, "Oh, as for you, when we look at," I study engineering, they look at my face and say, "As for you, one day you become an Osofo." They don't want to become Osofo's wives. But when he said that, I took it to heart and considered it. Because I knew that one day I'll get more actively involved in Christian work. And by God's grace, I can say it as a way of patting my wife at the back, that she has really supported me in Christian work. What my auntie said has been proved.
That's nice.
So that does not mean that I am against people choosing. But all I will advise those who want to search is that they must search properly. They shouldn't just go to the computer and browse. They must do their homework. So that when you present the lady or the gentleman to your family, then you are sure. I've told my children that as for me, you are going to do your search. Whatever effort I have to put in, I will make it. But the decision is yours. Even though we will be affected. We are praying for you, but you have to make a choice. Because, like we said, Jacob made a choice, and he got it. So all those are factors. And depending on your choice, if you think that, if I had the power if the council, I was telling some council members that if they could give me the power, I'll look into the faces of some of the young ones who are giving us problems, who should be getting married and are not married, and knock their heads against each other for them to be sensitive to the fact that the ladies are looking, and yet they are looking down, And sometimes I've had some occasions where I've encouraged some people to start a relationship, and it worked. Yes, it worked. They are very happily married. So that is not to be written off. Sometimes if you have seen a lady and you think that you are interested, you can just call the attention of some elderly person and say, "Oh, I've seen this lady," Then he will also come in and do the scouting. And so, "Oh, it's okay." And sometimes you can even ask the lady, what I used to do, those times when I was working among young people. I'll invite the lady and the gentleman to a meal in my house. And they come and eat. While we are all eating, we are chatting, smile. So he sees the smile of the lady, how she smiles, and all those things. Then when we are done, I say, "Oh, she wants to ask of leave. So can you accompany her to the station. And when they continue, they talk. And most times, it has yielded very, very fruitful results. So now the youth are very, very sensitive to this. So we give them room to take their decision. But they should know that they don't have to be delaying so much. Right.
We'll take a music break now, but please keep your comments, questions, suggestions, whatever it is you have coming in through our Facebook platform or our YouTube channel, or you can send them via WhatsApp 0501 579 996 0501 579 996. I beg your pardon. We'll take a break now. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. In this session, we are going to be taking more of your comments, your objections, whatever it is you have. So please share them with us. Papa, I have a very important question. Now, we all know that, or we think that it is only the white wedding that requires us to have or go through a counseling session. Is that true? For the traditional marriage, if I want to have just a traditional marriage, am I supposed to be counseled?
Yeah, thank you very much. The essence of premarital counseling is to prepare one for marriage. So if the person is going through a traditional marriage alone,
Right.
which is recognized, that person can be encouraged to do premarital counseling. When the counseling is over, the essence of the counseling is for other counselors to help you think through. Because normally, we don't stand in love, we fall in love. So people who fall in love, they don't think properly. And you need counselors to prompt you and say, watch this, watch that, watch this, watch that. Just for you to take the decision for yourself. So that is the essence of premarital counseling. And premarital counseling does not necessarily mean that you must at all costs marry her or him. If along the line you find that you are not compatible or you cannot cope, it's better for you to break than for you to go further. Last week, Reverend Santenchi and his wife were telling us about that. That you can really date as many, but court one at a time. And in the premarital counseling, you are still courting. You have not really come to that point. So if you come to a point and you think that it won't work, you can do that. So I'll really encourage even those who want to go to the extent of traditional marriage to do that. But let me maybe put this in also that sometimes people want to stop at traditional marriage because of the way we have hyped wedding, the white wedding. As I said, next week I'm sure the lawyers will talk about it. The white wedding is about the parties, the man and the woman, two people who are witnesses from both parties. So the man's two sides, the woman's side two sides. That is sex. The marriage officer, whether it is the registrar or the pastor, and then possibly the person is coming from a church, one person at least. That is 8. That is all that is required. So the long bridal train and the use of the type of vehicle. Look, at the end of the day, what is important is the vows. If the man came in shorts, and the lady came with a slit, or the gentleman came with a bonshika and the lady came with a drone, the marriage is based on the people who are present and fulfilling. There are some guidelines which the lawyers, I'm sure, will help us. There are some guidelines which must be adhered to. And then, based on that, the marriage becomes this. So I will encourage all who think about traditional marriage. In fact, now I realize that sometimes the cost involved even in the traditional marriage is a lot. And sometimes it is not the doing of the parents. It's the young people who are hyping it. You know, as for the parents, all that they need are the gifts that are brought to be exchanged. So if you want to bring your friends, you want to bring all these things, well, as for them, they'll be there. Yes, so young people who are married, or desire to marry, and even family, parents, I think we should help our children so that they don't spend so much on their traditional marriage and the wedding, only to find themselves really in debt, even at the beginning of their marriage.
Okay. Papa, before we continue, Nanadra Agrippina has a question. She says, let me take you back to the marriage list. How does the daughter see the list? Do her parents call her to discuss it with her? Please clarify this for me.
Right, thank you. So, a lady sees my daughter. They begin to, let me say, court. And they get to a point where my daughter thinks that she can marry the gentleman. Then she makes me aware. So normally there are some conventional items in the lists. Generally, all over. In the list, there will be items for the lady, which is the dowry. There will be items for the in-laws. There will be items for the witnesses, generally. And so when I say witnesses, when we bring it into the church setting, it means the church is a witness. the friends are witnesses. So when you see souvenirs and others being given, they are being given out to witnesses. So that when you have the cloth, you have the handkerchief in your house, yes, you remember that you went to this marriage, this traditional marriage. So these are key components which are prescribed. But as to the quantity, most times it depends on families. Okay. Yes. So when these things are brought to bear, they can be used to compile a list. Or sometimes the parent can just give these general prescriptions and allow the daughter to work out a list. Come and show it to him. He looks at it. He says, "So this is okay. This is a good list. And therefore, we can go ahead." So normally the lady would have seen the list if she's in good relations with the father. They would have talked about it. And sometimes if the father is not in the know, he would, in Accra, for example, I realize there are two options. One is to go to your family, that's the extended family, and collect a list. Or some churches have also got a list. So you go and collect it. The family will edit it and say, "This is what we want to have for our daughter."
Right.
And then you go ahead.
Okay. But before we continue, we'll take a comment from Ellen Soa. She says, "You'll be surprised how the promptings of a close friend or senior could be spot on in choosing a partner. So I support Osofo. If you are having difficulties, prompt a senior to make a recommendation." Papa, with the recommendation, I want to ask you, should I tell the senior to go and talk to the lady or the guy on my behalf, or to just support my vision?
Well, some of the men, they visit the ladies, they go there, he's so determined to go and say that he gets there, the lady is sitting there, he'll be scratching the head. And then he'll go back. Sometimes, when you say somebody is called a senior, it means that person has gone through the marriage. If, for example, you're a gentleman and you prompt a senior, an elderly person in the church, who is a very good friend of yours, she knows how to prepare the application. She will find ways and means of maybe talking to the lady and asking her, "So is there somebody in the relationship? So I'm single, I don't have anybody. Why are you not?" So nobody has come. Then she's taking records.
In this case, she's the spy.
Oh, the spy will be too. It's a scout. She has come to scout this place.
Okay.
And then find that, the lady, nobody has come. That's why she's not married. Then she'll find ways and means of drawing. The ladies, they know their own things. So they will find ways of prompting the lady to say that, you look left, look left, look left. And you look left to find that, apparently somebody has been. Exactly.
Okay.
So that is where I think that the seniors play a key role. Like I said, my auntie, she has been in marriage. She was also a minister's wife.
Right.
And she could sense from the direction in which I was going that I love to do God's work. And so,
your wife is
exactly, she tried to look for somebody. And then she drew my attention that, somebody is around who is a good person.
Okay, Papa, yes. Quickly, how did you feel when she told you, the very first time she told you, "Okay, I want you to talk to Yamansa and see how you can go." I know you trusted her, like you said, but instantly, did you feel that she didn't find you confident enough to maybe talk to someone? How did you feel? Because now we feel a lot of things when things like this come up. Right. So how did you feel?
It was not just that the day I went home, she just called me and said, "I have somebody in mind." I went on vacation. She knew that I was about finishing the university. And we have been talking.
Okay.
She's my mother. So we talk. And she realized that I've been searching for true love. So in the midst of the conversation, she said, but have you spotted somebody? I said, no. In fact, those times on campus, there are all kinds of things. But I had not really had anybody, I would say, that I was serious really... Right. There were people I had as relationships. So she said, well, this grandmother who this house, she has got some grandchildren. And I've taken time to study one of them. There were many, but I said, I've studied one of them, and I believe that she'll be a good wife. And I said, oh, okay. It will be good for me to meet her. So that is how it went. So it is not like an imposition. It was a dialogue, conversation which was leading. As I said, the seniors are seniors. So they have their own way of gradually leading you. So when, in the end, we met, she didn't have to sit in.
Okay.
She just came, we had a chat, we talked like we've met for the first time, we are friends. I tried to know more about her, she also tried to know more about me. And then we said, okay, we'll continue from there. And then we continued. And my auntie was in the background. Yes.
Right. Auntie Ruth says, very interesting topic. Thank you for the insight, Papa. Thank you to Auntie Ruth. Papa, before I forget, to go and do the knocking, who are the people who should be in that, should I call it a train, or that group?
The delegation that goes. Normally, the knocking is to be done as a way also of introducing the families. So, in some cases, the gentleman who has shown interest, the father and mother, can go. It's a small delegation. Sometimes the father might send somebody to go and knock and indicate that this is the interest we have. And normally when he goes, he'll go to meet the lady's parents. Because the gentleman would have been introduced to the lady already. The gentleman would have been introduced by the lady to her parents. So they know him. So this spokesperson is just going to formally introduce the gentleman and also to ask for the hand of the lady. In fact, in the true sense of traditional marriage, even fathers are not supposed to be at the traditional marriage. Yes. It's of late that I realize fathers are going, but the father sends a delegation so that the delegation, when they are finished, will come and report to him.
Okay.
But if he goes himself, who does he come to report to? You see? And even some churches, the truth is that the church sends a delegation, which does not include the minister. So that the delegation goes and comes to report to the minister. But now, because of the rule that has been carved in the traditional marriage, the minister sometimes has to be present. Sometimes you see fathers who are going there who are present. But it's more to do, if you go for a typical gang marriage, the father of the lady is put somewhere. All the men, yes, and the aunties will do all their contracting. When they are done, then they'll go and show their items to the men. Yes, so the men don't really come in at much. Just that they will endorse and affirm what the aunties have done.
Thank you, Papa.
Yeah.
Papa, if I want to have just a traditional wedding, am I obliged to tell the church about it?
Yes, because at the contracting of the marriage, the church must be represented.
Okay, so it's compulsory.
It's helpful.
Okay.
It is not compulsory, it's helpful because you belong to a family.
Okay.
And the church is the family. Okay. And so if you inform the church will say, okay, if we cannot come, maybe you are going to have the traditional marriage in the north. The minister will write a letter to another congregation
in the north
to go and represent the church. And when they are done, they report to the church. Yes.
Right. So, Papa, in a typical traditional marriage planning, let's assume my parents want to be our counselors. Is it allowed?
I believe that parents should have been their children's counselors from infancy.
Okay.
You see, premarital counseling does not really start with the 3 months. When I'm at home with my son, he might not, in fact, you'll be surprised to know that when I was in secondary school, my father began to prompt me about marriage.
Okay.
The do's and don'ts, the places where I can marry from, places where I have to be careful about, So all those promptings are part of inputs into premarital counseling. The mother, while cooking in the kitchen, is sending some signals. If you are cooking and for example, if you kill a chicken, if you happen to kill a chicken, this gizzard, give it to your husband to eat. All those are indications to help prepare the lady for the marriage. In fact, if those things are done properly and the foundation is solidly laid, then the 3 months or 6 months that we are doing is only because the two of them, you see, in the early part, it's a broad preparation.
Okay.
The girl might not necessarily know who exactly she's going to marry. The same applies to the gentleman. But now they are both settled on who they are going to marry. So then the counselor is going to help them to look at these areas a bit more critically. So that becomes important. If parents choose to do their own premarital counseling, it depends on the system. For example, I'm a pastor. I am a counselor. But if my daughter is going to get married, I wouldn't want to do the premarital counseling.
Papa, why?
Because there are some questions, when I ask her,
she may not be comfortable.
she will not feel comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah, so I prefer that somebody will do the premarital counseling. And then when they are done, they both come to me. And if I have something to add, I will add to that. Then they can share, their lives with the counselor. And it's also helpful because the counselor also becomes like a godparent.
Right.
A godparent. You find that in traditional marriages, when the traditional marriage has been done, they will ask, who is behind the lady?
Right.
Who are behind the gentleman? And then they will show them to the public. What that means is that if there are any difficulty, they shouldn't rush to their parents.
They should go to those
They
people.
should go to those people. They are there for them.
Okay.
And they should be confident to share their challenges with them so that they help them. Because people have made time to come and sit in the contract of the marriage. And nobody desires to see the collapse of the marriage.
Right. Papa, we may not always have you here like this talking about marriages and whatnot. So for the benefits of that, I'll ask 2 very simple questions. I asked Reverend Asante and Mama last week. During a counseling session, you have realized that these people are not compatible. Would you tell them?
As a counselor,
You need to prompt them. Not tell them, but prompt them.
Okay, how do you do that, Papa?
Well, it depends on how you ask the question. Sometimes you see, as a counselor, as you relate with them, you ask a question. And then the way one of them answers, you can see that there is something wrong somewhere. You can ask the lady to follow up. And then the next meeting, you see whether she has got the answer. And sometimes it might have come out boldly. Sometimes you can even see in the counseling the temperaments that are showing up. You can see that this kind of temperaments, these people, when they go, they will clash. So you don't tell them in the face per se, but you prompt them. One example, I think I heard it last about blood groupings and the SS, AS, and other things. The best that the counselor would do to make you go and do a medical test, you go and do it, you get your results. You look at it. If the counselor is not a medical person, he or she will direct you to a medical person. They will tell you the pros and cons. If you decide that we want to get married, then you own the responsibility. So as for the counselor, he cannot stop you. I don't think it's recommended that he or she stops you, but guides you to know the consequence. And when you both have weighed it, let me use this opportunity to say that when you both have weighed it and you find that it will be good for us to part, you started as friends. Please, when you court and you find that it won't work, go back to friendship. Don't go back to enemies. Go back and remain friends. Sometimes I say it funnily to people that if she says she won't marry you, don't worry. When we get to heaven, for all you know, her apartment is next to yours. So you can always see her face. But on earth here, she thinks that we cannot live together. Okay. Just accept it in good faith. Okay. Don't find ways and means of convincing her at all costs. And you, the lady, must know this a decision of life. Don't say, oh, when we marry, he will change. No. If you have seen the red flags, watch it.
Not run. We should just watch. We shouldn't run for our lives. Papa.
Well, if you run, you might hurt your feet. So just watch and call. Just find a way to humbly handle the relationship. Especially if there is a counseling and one party wants to back off. The counselor can help them to part comfortably without hurting each other. Yeah.
Papa, the very final one. How long does counseling last in Trinity?
Well, counseling here is between 3 to 6 months. Averagely, you see, most times it depends on the two parts, the counselor and the counselees. Sometimes the counselees are so busy, they are not able to meet the counselor regularly. But at least there is some schedule they will want you to go through. So if you meet them and your schedules are such that you can finish in 3 months, great. If it is not, and it has to be 6 months, then you work it out. But generally, between 3 months to 6 months is adequate. It's adequate. It is only to give you level 101 of marriage. There is more to be learned, but just to get the basics right.
Okay. Papa, we are drawing to a close. Your final words.
Right.
Please wrap up for us.
I would want to say that biblical marriage operates within a traditional system. As we saw in the Bible, Abraham and all those people got married within a cultural milieu. It is that when we take the marriage, those who are not Christians also get married. But it becomes biblical marriage or Christian marriage by virtue of the fact that we are guided by biblical norms to make the marriage work according to God's expected order. And therefore, if we are Christians and we want to get married, we should know that it is a holy institution and we must not rush. At the same time, we must not also drag our feet. Go through, be assisted gradually to get the point where now we can stand on our feet and then we move on. There is the traditional marriage because we are marrying to add to the society. But there are also laws. And depending on what type of marriage you adopt, if it is marriage under ordinance, then the laws of the land and what pertains to marriage under ordinance must be adhered to. If it is traditional marriage, as we rightly were told, the contracting of the marriage can be done by the families. But to give it a legal support, you go to the assembly or the courts and then you register it as a traditional marriage. But the traditional marriage is superseded by the marriage under ordinance. When we want a wedding, let me say that there is also traditional wedding, yes, which doesn't come into the church. Yes, they have their own way. The wedding is the day that the woman goes to the husband. So they have their traditional way of, and the Muslims also have it. But in the system, if you decide to move from traditional marriage, which has not been registered, to marriage under ordinance, then the laws of the marriage under ordinance supersedes the traditional marriage, in which case it is one man, one wife. And my final advice to parents is that parents, as we raise up our children, we should raise them up to become marriageable material. Forgive me for using material. But they should be people who we have trained right from infancy. The little things we give to them to do, the focus is that when they are also on their own, they will be able to sustain a marriage and be a blessing to the others.
Papa, you have wrapped up, but there's a question from Norbert. He says, what is your take on some counselors who have couples take actual written tests and exams? I'm assuming the tests and exams are academic, maybe some arithmetic and some English. Does that happen?
No, well, there are tests, especially when it comes to temperamental assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, counseling that I have been involved in, I will give you, there is a book, the book that we use will guide such that you ask some questions, you will fill. When you finish, it helps you to identify which area, temperamental area you find yourself in. Sometimes it goes to confirm. So you know, oh, this man I'm marrying, this is the way he looks like. Even though I've been seeing him this way,
This is who he
within
actually is.
who he actually is.
Right.
That is that. And it also helps the counselor to be able to guide them. You know, sometimes you have some very quiet man who marries a loud-voiced woman. The woman looks, hey, 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 but in the true sense, that is not what she is.
That's right.
You know, the man might be very quiet, but that is not what he is. So sometimes such tests are done to bring out some of these things. The medical test, for example, also brings out what is in their blood, so that if there are any issues that are to be resolved, they are done. But not an exam of start work and time to stop. No, it is basically inputs. There are inputs that goes into the premarital counseling.
Okay. Thank you, Papa. This has been Let's Talk About. I'd like to share some of the things I took note of. Papa has categorically made us know that there's nothing like a Christian marriage, but there are traditional marriages. And he has also told us that there are 3 marriages that are legally recognized or accepted in Ghana: traditional marriages, Islamic marriages, and marriages under ordinance. He has also told us that you may be a Christian, but traditions are important in traditional marriages. So if you are going to ask for someone's hand in marriage and you are asked to bring a bottle of schnapp, please take the schnapp. Don't say because you're a Christian, you buy Fanta. He also says that marriage is a holy agreement, sort of holy institution, and it should be treated as such. And the very important one I picked was the fact that if you are courting, or during courting you realize you are not compatible, or during counseling you are being prompted to know that you are not compatible, do not become enemies. Rather remain friends. Papa also has made us see some advantages and disadvantages of arranged marriages and betrothals. So if you have families who have decided that there's someone who is suitable for you to marry, who will be helpful to your future and etc., you should actually consider it. Talk to the person. That is if you are single and ready to think about marriage, of course. You should consider it, talk to the person. And we can use this marriage as an example. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This has been Let's Talk About, and we have been talking about the wedding versus the marriage, putting specific spotlights on the traditional marriage. My name has been Togo Lamadeku Sedinam. We'll see you same time next week. Good night.